everybody. Welcome to my kitchen/office space. I am thrilled to be here. As Kat said, I'm Jess Gaffney. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Beam. I'm also just super grateful to Kat and naturally Austin and Sarah for letting us partner with this awesome event. It's such a great way, I think, to really celebrate International Women's Day and women in general. And I just think anytime that anyone forces me to like put on earrings and lipstick is a win instead of like a full athleisure outfit 100%.
My hair is also clean.
Yeah, mine too.
Clean hair.
Mine too. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to Bree and Sarah today. Bree and Sarah are both super impressive founders. They are both funded by Beam Angel Network, our newest program that we launched in September to directly connect early stage women-founded companies in Texas with angel investment. So Bree and Sarah were part of the first group of women that we have helped to fund. So I was really proud of that. It was one of the highlights of my year. And let's just get started. The panel is called The Good, Bad, and Ugly, Being a Woman Founder and All That Comes with It. I think, you know, I'm a women founder myself. And so just from my own experience, I know it can be one of the most thrilling, growth focused, inspiring, experiences that you can have in your life. And it can also be really hard. So we want to talk about both those things. And I'm excited to have Bree. Hi, Bree. Hi, Sarah. Join us. And why don't we just kick off? From what I understand, we have about a half hour. We'll chat, the three of us, and then we'll leave it open for about 15 minutes of questions. Does that sound good? Awesome. So let's get started. Bree and Sarah. Bree is the founder of Radical Girl Gang, and Sarah is the founder of Journ. If you don't mind starting out by telling us a little bit more very, very quickly about yourself, and then really what inspired you to become a woman founder and start your company.
Hi, everyone. Like Jess said, I am Bree Cruikshank. It's so great to be with all of you powerful women and men in the room today. Happy International Women's Day. I am the founder and CEO of Radical Girl Gang. And if you aren't familiar with us, we are the online marketplace to discover, support, and shop from emerging women-owned brands, which also might be some of y'all in the audience. So please come check us out after this. But yeah, a little bit about, I guess what inspired me in the first place is really the statistic that the male to female CEO ratio is 19-1. And that truly was a starting point for my inspiration on my journey. I will always remember, starting out as a founder and beginning to experience many of the obstacles that women entrepreneurs experience firsthand. And learning about the female leadership gap, and it really catalyzed in me, both personally, a passion to live up to my potential and to really step into my vision. And then, I'll share more about my business throughout this. But what we do is we support early stage emerging women entrepreneurs. And ultimately, our goal is to change those statistics. We're probably all familiar here with the reality that 2.3% of venture capital funding went towards women-led businesses in the last year. Big bummer because it actually decreased from 2019. So yeah, I know, big thumbs down on that. There's a really long way to go. And for me, what really inspires me day in and day out is knowing that, look at all of the women here. There are incredible women entrepreneurs out there. I believe that women entrepreneurs are visionary, powerful, and absolutely essential in realizing gender equity in this country and across the world. So ultimately, our mission is to invest in women entrepreneurs and help them unlock their potential. And I'm super excited to be here today.
Thank you, Bree. Those are such important, sobering statistics. One of my, the one that fuels me and sort of stands out to me every day is that only really 1% of all women founded companies, so there's about 12 million of them in the US, are, reach that $1 million revenue mark. 88%, they never reach over 100,000. So we're basically creating a great job for ourselves, right? But we're not creating the type of companies that have that ripple effect, because when women start the companies like you and Sarah, you're not just thinking about profit, you're thinking about impact.
Yep.
And so when women start companies, they support other women, they support communities, they support, so many different things, families that are so important to a thriving economy and the kind of world we want to live in. So I think that's wonderful. Sarah, I'd love to hear from you about your journey.
Yeah, thank you. So great to be here. Thanks for having me. Happy International Women's Day. JOURN actually is short for journey. It's simply short for journey. People always ask, like, what does this stand for? But it's simply was born through my journey as a woman of color and not being able to find products that really helped address my underlying skin concerns. And, in my previous life, I was actually an attorney. And, as someone who didn't have a ton of time for their makeup and skincare regimen, I also had cystic acne. And I was frustrated with having to layer all these skincare and makeup products. And after all the effort that I was putting into my routine, I still couldn't look natural. And so turned to the industry for answers, couldn't find products that would essentially do two things. One is marry skincare and makeup into one product that would simplify my routine, and second of all would just help me look natural. And what I found was that though brands in most recent years have been really helping address the shade problem by solving inclusive shades, but no one was really looking at the underlying skin concerns of medium to deeper skin tone, such as dark circles, hyperpigmentation, discoloration, issues that anyone may experience, but are more prevalent in the medium to deeper skin tones. And so I started a passion project, still practicing law, started a passion project to create products for myself, and very quickly realized that the problem was just bigger than me. And a lot of people experience this problem. And that was the beginnings of JOURN.
I love that so much. And I also love that, like, it's not just about the product, it's about the confidence and feeling good about yourself, right, and all that kind of, that comes with every day, every part of your life. So I love hearing that story. Let's talk, actually, we just touched a little bit on mindset, which I know, like, every time I speak to a woman founder, every time we have a conversation, whether they're starting out or they're super successful, the topic of mindset comes up. And I kind of think of that as an overarching theme for anything related to confidence, imposter syndrome, growth mindset, all that kind of stuff. How has your mindset influenced your entrepreneurial journey? And actually, like, let's get even more action oriented. Like, what is the best piece of advice to combat any negative thinking? Because this is hard. So, like, what would you advise as the best thing to do to to address those kind of thoughts or feelings?
All right. So I totally agree with everything that you said, Jess. I have been quoted saying mindset is 99% of my job, and that still holds true today. It's a huge part of being able to get up every day and weather this journey through the ups and downs and all of the weird twists and turns. I will say, for me personally, especially with like such a big platform like this, I just want to say, for me personally, therapy has been absolutely key in me becoming the best business leader that I can be. I like to tell people, like, I go to therapy, I make more money. Like, truly, there is a relationship there. I think that it's so important to take care for ourselves mentally. So maybe that is going to therapy for you. I definitely recommend that for founders, because this is a very unique and extremely challenging journey. And I mean, there are things that I feel like I've gone through that, my friends who are entrepreneurs might understand, but not even be equipped to kind of help me with themselves. So being able to get that support through the rejection and the struggle and the stress and the pressure is really amazing. I don't know if I can say that there's like one fix for negative thinking. I think it's about, like, on a personal level, knowing yourself really well and being able to understand what might trigger negative thinking and being able to stop it. Or, sometimes we also just need to feel our feelings. And like, that's something that's been huge for me to learn. I always used to be the type of person that would just repress my feelings, because I was like, I got work to do. I never want to be sidetracked. I just want to focus and get it all done. But the truth is, for me, that sometimes when I am feeling negative, I just need a mental health day. or maybe I need to go on a run, or maybe I'm really craving support from my network or my friends or my advisors. Or maybe I want to watch some reality TV and cry. I mean, it's really, I think, about tapping into yourself and understanding what you need to get through that time. And being able to, I think, honor our needs is really important. As women entrepreneurs, I think we have such a unique opportunity to redefine how we've done business in the past. We don't need to be hustling 24/7. Yes, a lot of us do as entrepreneurs, but also anyone that has built a successful business will tell you how essential it is to recharge and to slow down, to spend time with your friends and family and dogs, and do things that are also those other parts of who you are. So those are some things that have really worked for me, and can't recommend therapy enough.
Such good advice. And I know they touched on this in the last panel too. Taking care of yourself is just super important. Thank you. Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, so I think it's hard not to develop imposter syndrome, especially when, you're constantly hearing no's, right? So you're hearing, like for us, we're hearing no's potentially from retailers and investors, and, trying to explain, even just for us, like our biggest challenge, and I'm sure this will come up later, is usually, how are we more than just a beauty brand? We're not just another beauty brand. And so constantly having to hear no, even if, you're trying to really show that we're different. I think, as Bree mentioned, I think being able to stop and realize, okay, I'm exhausted today, I'm burnt out today, I'm not as productive today. And really being able to step back and saying, okay, I'm going to take a half a day off and I'll make up that time later on, tomorrow or on Saturday. And therapy too. I think just being able to have a space that is, a place that is, not your friends, right? Because I know your friends, there's a lot going on in the world. So just being able to take that time and talk to somebody and know that's your hour, and then being able to step back and say, okay, I need an hour to do something that's not work related. And I'm also, I have a mom to a 2-year-old. And so life is crazy right now, just between work and balancing parenthood, and just being able to step away and say, okay, I need half a day without work, without my child, just to recharge and reset, and then come back stronger. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And y'all, like, we're like in a pandemic that like is layered on by like a snowstorm and like all these other like, crazy things in the world. So I think it's also important to remember that maybe we just needed a little bit extra this year, right. And to be kind to ourselves. So super helpful. Sarah, you brought up fundraising a bit and the no's and everything. So let's talk a little bit about fundraising. So could you describe what your experience has been like and the best piece of advice for navigating it? Sarah, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, I think that, like I just mentioned, one of the hardest challenges that we receive is, well, first of all, most of the meetings we've had with investors are mostly men. And they are, so the first thing you have to go in and be like, okay, they've immediately been like, okay, this is just another beauty brand, right? So now we're walking in and saying, no, we're actually looking at the underlying skin concerns of medium to deeper skin tones. This is a huge white space in the market. This has not been done. Then you're going in and explaining to them, okay, this is, our first product was a color corrector. So you're saying, okay, this is a color corrector. This is how it works. And they have no idea, because most of these men don't wear makeup. And then they're like, oh, can you send my wife or my daughter's samples? So now, they can't make a decision there. And then you're layering in the fact that you're basically saying, okay, no, this is how it works. You're teaching them what's being done. This is why we're different. And you've already lost them at the first layer. So that's been a big challenge for us, as well as, most of these men are white, will go into these meetings, and they really have no idea what the skin concerns of medium to deeper skin tones are, because they've never, had issues with dark circles, or hyperpigmentation or dullness. So they're, so they don't completely understand the problem. So that's been our biggest challenge, is really explaining to them these different layers, and trying to convince them when you've already lost them at the first one.
Yeah, I really can empathize with that, because I had a similar thing with my startup, because it was focused on mothers and high quality flexible work. And it was just a lot of educating on top of it. I will say, for, sort of everyone listening, that the exciting thing is that there are so many more women joining the investment, you know, world right now. Obviously, it's still male dominated, but I think that it is, you know, really helpful to try to find investors that do get it, and that you're not selling, you're not, you know, having to educate them at first. It's not easy, but they are out there. I mean, even the angels in our network, you know, we were joking very early on when we had about 15 of our, when we signed on about 15 angel investors back in September, and we didn't have one white man. We had like all women and people of color. And we were like, where are all the white men? You know, like, and so I do think that they are out there, and I would advise everyone to, you know, spend some time trying to find them, so that you don't feel like it's an uphill battle even before you even start. Bree, what about you?
Well, I will say, Jess, it's funny because I was looking through some of the questions this morning, and this was the only one that like I just skipped because I was like, I don't even know where to start on this. Fundraising is like one hell of a journey. I mean, I will tell you, I feel like I've aged a lot in the last several months since we started raising. There's like extreme highs and lows. Parts of it have become fun for me, but only after like a lot of practice. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome, especially at the beginning. I feel like this is just a side note, a piece of advice. Something that has really helped me is reframing it like, one, I don't need to convince people. The right investors for us don't need to be convinced of our vision. And also, looking at it as an interview for them as well. Like, we actually just had a potential investor that we ended up not working with because we were not aligned from a value standpoint. So for me, that has helped kind of put some of the power back in my seat as I have navigated through this very, very challenging world of fundraising. I think for us, what would have to be the most challenging part of it at this stage is exactly what Jess described at the very beginning of this, with women entrepreneurs and so few getting to that $1 million mark. Well, our business is before that, because we're at a pre-seed stage where, you know, like many women entrepreneurs out there, I've bootstrapped my business for the past year plus with my own savings. And we generated really exciting traction from that. We beat all our targets. We're post revenue, all of these things that, you know, people say that they're looking for when they go to invest, but it's still a very challenging climate for women founders to raise at this stage, especially where you might show up and sometimes, I mean, we get both sides. We'll have investors who are like, oh my God, that's phenomenal that you were able to generate, you know, X amount of revenue with, you know, zero resources. I can't wait to see what you can do with $500,000, which is what we're raising. And then we also get the other side where it's like, oh man, like that's not enough traction. Like your revenue's too low. It's way too early. And so you get stuck in a really challenging space where it's like, we have the potential to get there. What we need is the capital to be able to scale our business to $1 million in revenue. I can't do that with magic and air. I need to do that with real money. So that's been our biggest challenge, is just getting in that sweet spot, you know, trying to find pre-seed VCs. And a lot of the ones that say they're early stage are not. So getting really, really focused. I think just when you look at like all of the rounds of fundraising, pre-seed in particular for women is so challenging, because you're really trying to find those believers and people that also understand that, you know, you have to invest in order for us to be able to realize that potential. We need the capital to do it. So it's been challenging for us, but we've still been making great momentum. And like Jess said, I mean, there are really exciting investors out there. And I feel really fortunate to have been, you know, connecting with some of those folks that are more unconventional in the VC landscape. I had a conversation with someone, actually, I'll give them a shout out, from Backstage Capital last week. And it was my first conversation ever with a venture capitalist where they asked about my mental health. And we talked about therapy in that conversation and about ways for founders to take care of themselves. So it's a challenging ecosystem, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there are good people out there. It just takes some work to find them.
Yeah, all really good points, Bree. And I think, you know, just to sort of brag on you two for a bit. You know, this is a hard process for anyone. Like it's not just women, you know, it is especially difficult for women. If you look at the statistics, obviously, if you're, you know, a Black woman, it's almost statistically impossible to fundraise. But I would say that, you know, you two did a really amazing job at selling your vision and, you know, but also backing it up with, you know, real numbers, real traction. And, you know, I think that the entire Beam Angel Network community was just so impressed with you as individuals. And early on, it's really about the individual and whether you believe that person can do it. And Bree, exactly how you responded, like, I love how you took the power back and you were like, you can respond to people. Look, I need this funding to show you what I can do. You know, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, responding in that way, respectfully, of course, and being honest, you know, really makes a difference. You know,
I actually started doing that. And there are conversations that I'm having now where I'm actually pushing back on investors because they're pattern matching to men. And actually, those have led to some really awesome relationships coming out of it. So that has been interesting. It's taken me a long time to get there, like confidence wise, and having enough of these conversations where I'm like, okay, I hear what you just said. What specifically makes you think or feel that we're too early? Like what part of our traction, you know? And so like feel free to push back on it, you know, respectfully, because that is also what the system needs to be challenged to change.
I totally agree. And I always like to say, like, take a piece of paper, write the number 1 through 50 down and literally just check off like that you spoke to these, you know, investors and almost like a badge of honor, like, okay, yeah, I did get those 50 no's and here's why, but guess what? It's fuel for, I'm going to change those later on into yeses. And, you know, thinking big picture about it too, is like, someone might not be good for you this moment, but staying in touch, keeping them on your, you know, quarterly or monthly updates, like developing those relationships over time is important. The average investor knows a founder for about 12 months before they invest, on the VC side, for sure. So I think that was a really good reality check, but also hopefully a little inspiring for y'all out there. Let's talk a little bit, besides fundraising, what would you say has been the most challenging part? You know, so take away fundraising and what has really helped you get through it from a business standpoint. So like resources, support, that kind of thing.
I can take this one first. So I think for me personally, so obviously the pandemic, we were in the middle of a move from the New York area. We're actually moving to LA, but ended up here in Austin. I think it was like the best decision, but really managing or juggling this, you know, life as a full-time mom, because we don't have childcare right now, as well as running a business full-time. So it's constantly a juggle of, okay, you know, I need to make sure my kid's eating all her food groups and making sure I'm making my meetings and fitting her nap schedule. So I think that's just been every day is a new challenge. You know, both, I call them both my babies, just because they're both, you know, they both have their own personalities and they're both unpredictable. So just really balancing and juggling has been challenging, but also I think it's been great for just my own personal development, is being able to do that, because coming from a legal background, I've just been so rigid in my own ways and making, you know, schedules. I think that's just been really, really challenging, but really also fulfilling to see that, you know, it's been a year and we've been able to do this. So yeah, that's probably mine.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Bree, what about you?
So I would, you know, my first answer was thinking of fundraising, but you took that away from me, Jess. I was thinking on this earlier, and I think for me, mine comes from more of an emotional space of just navigating through the fear and uncertainty of this job. I think that's probably the most challenging part for me. I mean, I think back to when I first left my full-time job at Outdoor Voices to pursue building Radical Girl Gang. And at the time, I thought that was like the biggest leap of faith and the biggest risk that I was going to need to take as an entrepreneur. And It wasn't. There have been so many leaps of faith that I've had to take since in order to continue building this. And with that just comes an immense amount of uncertainty. Like, I can't predict the future. And, you have to, in order to get through that, one, I think you need to acknowledge those feelings, and sometimes feel that fear. And then two, I think for me, it's been all about cultivating a really, really deep sense of trust in myself. And just knowing my vision, having total conviction in what I'm building, and being able to rely on that trust and that faith and that conviction during the times that are really challenging, when I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, or I am feeling like giving up, or like I don't know what's going to happen next, or I don't know, when we're going to close this round. That's how I'm able to navigate through those times, is through really trusting in myself and what we're building.
I love that. I think that's super important. Let's talk specific resources. So do either of you, visit certain blogs, listen to certain podcasts, like talk to specific people, mentors, advisors, like what are your resources if you're like, okay, I am hitting this problem, where do I go? What has been really inspiring or really helpful? I'm curious, because I always love sharing what resources are with others.
Well, first of all, Beam has been so we are new to Austin. And so Beam has just been such a great resource for me personally to meet other women founders, just connect with other amazing women, and learning their journeys. And they've become such a huge resource for me. You've been such an inspiration and resource as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sarah. I was not asking this question to set it up for you.
No.
It's not that way,
but
I swear.
No, it's the honest truth though, just being new. And obviously, like with the pandemic, it's not as easy as being able to go out and having as many meetings. I mean, we don't want to jump on another Zoom call, even if it's a networking one, right? Because we're such Zoom fatigue that we're all experiencing. So I think that has just been a great resource. I think women founders, I think we're our own breed, and we come together and we really want to lift each other, and we want each other to grow. And there have been, my whole experience has been just so amazing with other women founders. Like, even if they're in the same space and they're your direct competition, but they'll be able to say, oh, here, talk to my contract manufacturer, or here's my lab that I work with. I mean, and I love that. And so I think for me personally I've been able to create this robust community of women that want to lift each other. And for me, it's like, whether it's like a roadblock as simple as, oh, I need a new packaging source because ours is stuck in customs, or whatever the issue might be, I just need to talk. I mean, I'm just having a shitty day, for lack of a better term, right? And I just need to see, do you have, what do you do when you have a shitty day? Do you go for a run, whatever you do? So I think for me, that's just been a great resource, with other women networks, communities, even Facebook groups, like Women Entrepreneur Facebook groups I was part of even when I was back in New York. So just those have been like great resources for me personally.
I love that. Bree, what about you?
So I feel so much the same way. Everything Sarah was saying, I was like clapping inside too. I mean, women entrepreneurs, other women entrepreneurs, like Sarah, I can already tell that we're going to be friends, and I can't wait to connect after this.
Same.
I would not be able to I would not be this far in my journey if it wasn't for the support of other women around me. And I mean, I've experienced the exact same thing as what Sarah described, like in the same space, similar space, it doesn't matter. Like, the women founders that I've connected with in Austin and outside of Austin have just helped me through my journey so much. And same exact thing as what she described. I mean, when I'm having a crappy day, that's who I ask for support from. And oftentimes it's not for an answer or advice. I just need to vent to someone who actually understands what I'm going through. And that makes a huge difference. So I would definitely say, like, get to know the women around you who are building incredible things, and create a tribe, because that is who's going to support you through this. And there is so much strength that I gain in just knowing that other women are trying to do this alongside me. I want to see us all win. The table is big enough for all of us. And I think that's my number one piece of advice in terms of resources is leverage the women around you, and use them for support.
I love that. And let's like back up for a second though, about, obviously, I think, thank you for saying those kind words about Beam. I highly recommend that anyone that's interested join our member collective to connect with other women founders. But besides that, like, let's say I'm new to Austin, or I'm new, to being an entrepreneur, and I don't have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs. Like, how would I go about starting that? Like, how would I build those kind of true relationships? Like, do you have any advice for the women, here about what to actually do to build that up, especially right now when you can't, go in person to a lot of things?
I honestly sometimes just if I have half an hour, I'll just sit on LinkedIn, and I'll find brands that because obviously I get hit with all these ads, sponsored content on my Instagram. So, I'll notate them, and then I'll just even reach out personally. Like, it's like, hey, I'm also a founder. Just want to, if this founder's local, do you want to have a distant coffee, or let's just have a Zoom call? Actually, we see a couple of faces on here that I've just randomly contacted and met with. And I think that is a great resource. And just ask every time I get on, I meet a new founder or an investor, always ask them to connect me to people, even if it's not an investor, just somebody else who's a founder who's doing something similar, or just someone who'd be good for me to connect with and grow my network. And I think that's two ways that I think I've been very successful, even just in a local community. We've only been in Austin 3 or so months, but just being able to meet the local community here, and then it's like when someone will recommend the same person again, then I'll know, okay, good, I've exhausted the local community. It's like when multiple people are recommending the same person. So I think for me, those have been good ways to connect.
Love it. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I think good old fashioned networking works great. And I know it might sound boring, but it's great in Austin. The community here really wants to see you succeed. And I mean, I moved here about 3 years ago, and at the time, literally didn't know anyone in Austin. And I now feel like I have the most incredible supportive network here. There really is such a great sense of community in Austin. So I think, what you'll find most of the time is that 99% of the time, people are going to say yes, and they're excited to meet with you. They're excited to connect you with other folks. They love what you're building, and they want to see you succeed. So that's definitely been my experience, and it sounds like that's a common experience for a lot of us. And then I'll also say, Jess, I know that you're not intentionally plugging Beam, but Beam has been a great way for me to connect with other women founders. I would recommend even like just doing programs, workshops, webinars, things like that have worked for me in terms of building my network of other women founders here locally. Boss Babes ATX is another really great organization that's all about women founders and is a great community as well. And then I'll also shamelessly plug RGG as well, I think is a good way to get plugged in also. So looking for those kind of like organizational support that you can find, and then also just good old fashioned hopping on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, and just starting there and asking for more connections.
I love that. And I agree. Boss Babes is great too. So we're going to jump into questions, but before we do, let's end on a positive note. Can you share your, like, the best part about being a women founder, or your most inspiring moment that you've had so far?
Two come to mind for me personally. The first one is, just going back to this concept of, when you hear a lot of no's and you're having, one of those days, and I know you said positive note, but there's a positive ending here. But, it's so funny. I sometimes feel like the universe, like we'll have a tough day, and then all of a sudden we'll get customers emailing us, or a comment, or, a review that will just say something like, this is the first time I've heard that a brand, or I felt that a brand has really heard me. And thank you for creating something just for me. This was something I was never able to find. So, just having those moments where that reaffirm like what you're doing, and like, you're destined to do this, and this is what you're, just this almost like, this whimsical feeling of like, okay, you're doing something right, or this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think that is the first one for me. And now the second one that I always think about is my daughter, when she was even one, she started recognizing like our Journ content, or like our ads that we would post on like YouTube, and she loved watching them. Like sometimes, when we're trying to get a call done, we'll just play these like ads for her, or like the video content that influencers create. And she would call them Mona. And the reason she would call them Mona is because one of our content creators that we worked a lot with, who also did some like photo campaigns and video campaigns for us, her name was Simona, and she's a woman of color. And so for me, it was so, I felt like I didn't grow up seeing women of color or women that look like me on TV. And she sees that, and she sees someone who looks like her, who looks like her mother. And for me, that was a moment where I was, I've done something right. So those are the two things that, really fuel me and keep me going, even on the toughest of days.
I love that. That's a really beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing. Well, Bree, what about you?
So Sarah, that was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, that just spoke to me so much. Well, gosh, there are so many best parts of this job, honestly. But my answer is kind of similar to like the first part of Sarah's, which I call that feeling of alignment. It's an indescribable feeling, and you'll just feel it at random times, and it could be a message from someone or something you're working on, or just remembering why you're working on this in the first place. And it's just this feeling like head to toe of, you just know with every fiber of your being that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life. Yeah. And that feeling is really, really special. And I think one of the very first times that I felt that was when I very first created my very first t-shirt. At the very beginning of RGG, our origin story is we started as a side hustle, similar to Sarah as well, the journey for a lot of women founders. And we started with a small line of clothing that we were producing. And when I say we, I mean me. And I will always remember the first shirt I made. It's called the CEO tee. It has CEO printed really, really big on the center of it. And I'll remember always picking that up from the screen printer in my car by myself during a lunch break from my 9-to-5 job, pulling over to the side of the road to open up the box and see what these new screen printed shirts looked like. And I just remember just crying. And I pulled one on and I sat down on the side of the sidewalk. And I just remember that was that feeling of alignment, wearing my CEO tee, having created it, and knowing like I was stepping into my vision and my power as a woman, as a founder, as a human, and doing what I was supposed to be doing. Best feeling.
I love that. Thank you, Bree. Yeah, that gut feeling is very true. I would totally empathize with that. So thank you, both of you, for chatting with me. Let's answer some questions. So I know we already received one. How do you recommend entrepreneurs develop ongoing relationships with the investors who initially say no?
I can hop into that one.
Sure.
First. Yeah. So first, I mean, I always like develop it like a relationship. When people say no, I'm like, okay, great. Well, like, I'm looking forward to staying connected. Sometimes people will just not be into your idea, in which case just take them off your proverbial list. But as long as like, they're interested, maybe they'll invest at a later stage. I keep a spreadsheet. First of all, you need to house all of that information in one place that you can continually reference. So treat it like a project, and, make something in Excel and keep all those contacts. I always add them to our business updates list, and investors love those updates. So I definitely recommend sending those out, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or whatever your cadence. That is one really great way for us to stay in touch with future potential investors. And they track your progress. I mean, that's the whole point of those business updates, is that potential investors will watch you for months. We've had this happen. And then when you do everything you said you were going to do, and you're sharing it out in your business updates, and they come back later and they're like, okay, you proved it to me. I'm going to invest now. So that's one great way. And then, if it's the right type of relationship in person, you can always just connect with them again, maybe ask them for advice about a particular topic that they have experience in, always structuring it in a way I think that values their time as well. But you can have a conversation with an investor, not necessarily about investing. Sometimes that's when they invest.
Mm-hmm. Good tips. Yes. Sarah, what about you?
I think, the spreadsheet is something that, I've created one and I always go in and update. And sometimes you walk into investor meetings and, having an investor on your portfolio, it's almost like a marriage, right? So you are selecting them as much as they're selecting you. And sometimes you walk into meetings and you're just like, okay, this is just not going to be a good relationship. And you cut that really quickly. So it's like, okay, this is not a fit, and something doesn't feel right and they're just not the right fit. You just end that. And then the ones that are, the other thing that we hear a lot is you're, just not there yet. Come back. We'll watch you come back to us in about a year's time, or when you hit, this milestone. And so really the updates are key. So then you add them to the list. I always put notes. I've created my little drop down. So it's okay. What milestone are we going to be going back to them? And then you just send them the updates, and you can tell, because, every time they go into the update, you can track them. It's like, okay, they're on, you're watching them as much as they're watching you. And so you just track that. And then when the time is right, or when you have done what they said that, what you said you would do, and you hit those milestones at that point, then they're like, okay, yeah, well, we're interested now.
Sarah, can I?
All right, I'm plugging in my laptop.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on something she said really quickly that I think is a great nugget of information. I didn't realize at first. Send your business update emails from an actual email marketing platform so that you can track who's opening and spending time on it. Right. At the very beginning stages, we were sending ours just, from Gmail. But that is what Sarah was referencing in terms of watching them. It is really useful to be able to have those analytics to actually view who is actively interested in still watching your company.
Super good tip. And Elliot posted, Brie, how powerful your updates are specifically, which I totally agree. Could you break down for the group, like exactly what you put in the update and like how you keep that energy going? And Sarah, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on like the timing of it. Our last one was totally focused around press, because going into the first quarter of the year, we had a whole press activation that we've been working on. And we wanted to make sure that our network knew that we were working on this, which is something we said we were going to do. And also that they were just able to see these, the exciting articles and whatnot. We also included some like recap numbers from 2020, though, because I knew that we had so many new investors joining that list. So it's really a strategy play for me. We think about what are the biggest achievements that we're excited about that we also think will interest our investor network. And then we really tie that back to our business objectives. So even talking about the press, for us, that has been actually great in generating more fundraising momentum. So look at it as, how can I use this email to achieve our business objectives? And then also, what are the biggest things that you've been doing as a business on a quarterly basis that you'll want to include in that email recap? And if you don't have any, then that's a great indication that maybe you want to work on, quarterly planning and thinking about what are some of the big milestones we can report back on. So it depends on the timing, but it's just also a blend of strategy and sharing back our highlights.
Super helpful.
Yeah, the only thing I'd have to add to that is we always look back at our previous update, and then we look at what we said we were going to do, and then and if we've done area, then we'll highlight that. And then something that
Sarah, pause for a little bit. We'll wait till she gets back. Brie, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can.
we said we were going to do. And then if we've done that, we'll highlight those. And then we'll also say, well, we didn't get a chance to work, this is going to be our highlight for the next quarter or whatever. So it's a good check for us as well to make sure that we're doing what we, intended on as well.
That's a really good point, is like having objectives, future objectives, and then showing how you've actually achieved those,
right,
that you followed through. I love that. Rebecca, hey, Rebecca. Rebecca's question is, do you have a co-founder? And if not, do you wish you had one, especially early on, to help balance your weaknesses for support and all the other things that a partner would help with?
I can
Bree,
jump
too.
in,
Yeah,
or
go for it.
Sarah, you can. Okay, I'll start this one.
Go for it.
So I never had a co-founder. I actually was always open to having a co-founder for RGG. Like at the beginning, I was like, I've got to find a co-founder. Like I'm open to it. She's got to be out there. Where is she? Well, I just happened to not find her, so I kept building it myself. So I'm a solo founder. I totally get this question though. Like it is so important to have support and balance. And I'm not working alone. We have a team of 4 of us, although most of our team is fractional. But at this stage, I ended up bringing on a director of operations who is really my counterpart. So I guess my answer would be totally depends on the business in your stage. Like I'm very pro co-founders. I think it would have been awesome for me, but it didn't work out this time. But I've still been able to find that support and that yin to my yang through just developing and growing my team. So I would say don't worry too much about that. If you don't have it right now, you can get there. I didn't feel like I had that kind of counterpart to my strengths until really this year when we brought on our director of ops, who's much more process oriented than I am. So you can get there with a team. But I do think it's great, whoever asked that you have an eye on your strengths and your weaknesses, because it is so important to know what you're not good at and fill in those gaps with people.
And also what you don't like to do.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's huge. You need to know what you hate doing and make sure to find someone who loves that. And I mean, that's what we ended up doing. And so that's how we've been able to kind of create this well-rounded team. But it's evolved that way. And, you know, we have gone through stages as a business where we didn't have this kind of well-rounded, cohesive team at the early stages.
I love that. Sarah, what about you?
Yeah. So my co-founder is also my husband.
I knew you would have that interesting. I know, which is a whole other panel, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say maybe like at the end of the day, we could have a happy hour about that. But no, so I think, so my co-founder is my husband, and I think it works really well because I came from, you know, a legal background, and he is he's been like the first ops hire at many different startups, health and beauty and others. So, you know, I brought to the table this like need for the product and the vision for what these products are going to look like and the problems they're going to solve, while he really helped out with the operations side of things. So like Bree mentioned, it is important to see what what those gaps are and what you don't like or are not good at, and then being able to fill those. So for us, it worked out really well where we sort of manage such different sides of the business that, and we laugh because I, having practiced law for about 7 years before I started Journ, I always say that I never want to look at a contract again. So I sent him legal, and then he goes, "You're going to manage supply chain," because that's what he did for many years. But really looking at those areas and, finding someone, whether it doesn't have to be a co-founder, it could be someone that you bring on as a contractor that's going to put in a few hours here and do X, Y, and Z. So you can really focus on the vision of the business or what you are, what you need to do to move the needle.
I love that. And I think that I am so impressed with your couple founder relationship. I think that's just so beautiful. And I also think that it's so important to know yourself, like you both said, basically, what you do well, what you don't do well, your weaknesses, but also, what you don't like doing. And, you quickly find out that you kind of get less motivated if you don't like it.
Right.
Renee Rouleau, who's going to speak later today, she gave that advice to me and other founders. And I just love that. It's so important to look at it that way too. Okay. So another question, I think we're good on time. Sarah and Kat, I think we have another 5 minutes. Yep. Okay. Just making sure. So hi, Lisa. So good to see you. Lisa's question is, how do you balance fundraising and running your company? And how much time do you devote to it each week? Such a good question.
Bree, you want to take this one first?
It's something I spent a lot of time thinking about. Yeah, it's really hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like it's a full-time job on top of a full-time job. There's been a couple different things for me. Like I did mention that we brought on a director of ops. That was around the January timeframe, and while I was fundraising before that, because I was still just involved in literally every single facet of the business on the day-to-day, every single thing, it was really, really challenging to allocate as much time as I wanted to aggressively fundraising, which of course means that I'm going to be moving slower towards closing the round. So shifting into the new year, I brought on our director of ops so that I was able to then allocate even more of my time to focusing on fundraising. So I would say, just starting out, thinking about the things that take up the most time, where do you have support and where do you need to find support? That was a big journey for me at the beginning of this, was filling in those spots, you know, customer service, fulfillment, like I said, with ops, like different parts of the business that needed to be taken care of, but that I wouldn't have the capacity to do. And then another thing that works really well for me is I'll generally dedicate certain days of my week specifically to fundraising. Right now, that's most of my week, but there's been different phases of this for me where I would do like Tuesdays and Thursdays. 100% of my time and energy would be focused on fundraising, and even my team knew that. So there's different things like that that have helped me just be able to balance everything. And then lastly, I would say it's really been hard for me to embrace this philosophy, but I've really had to accept that during this time right now, there's certain things where I have to say good enough is good enough. This is not a time to be a perfectionist about every single thing. I also just generally struggle with perfectionism, which you have to kind of keep in check as a business owner. And so it's also a balance of, what are certain things that you do need to let go of? If you need to close this round and you need to get the capital for your business, and that's your number one priority, then maybe that means that you need to shift around some initiatives or some marketing plans or other things that would hold you back from being able to accomplish that.
Super helpful. And just so everyone knows, I would recommend a book called Startup Success. It's by Gordon Doherty, who's a great advisor for women founders, and a founder of Capital Factory and Shockwave Innovations. And he breaks it down like how much, oh my God, okay, there you go.
Love this
He
book.
breaks it down, right? For like how much you should be spending on this campaign. So shout out to Gordon, I put it in the chat. Sarah, do you have anything there? I was gonna take one more quick question while you're answering. I'll just look for one.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I think that I would say exactly what Bree said is the same feeling that I have on the issue. I think fundraising in and of itself is a full-time job. Then running a business is a full-time job, right? So there's only 24 hours in a day. I think the biggest piece of advice before you even get into fundraising mode is write down things that are gonna have to, you know, that can't be put on pause, right? So it's like, okay, product development for our next product cannot be put on pause, X, Y, and Z cannot be put on pause. And then you try to time block and work a schedule where you allot certain periods of your day, or whether it's full days towards that, because what ends up happening is you can do everything and then you're left disappointed or stressed out or frustrated and burnt out, whatever it might be. So just, I think setting the expectation with yourself in advance, where it's like, okay, this is just gonna have to wait. It's not crucial right now, and this will have to get done, you know, in 4 weeks or whatever the case might be. So I think time blocking and setting the expectation for yourself, knowing that there's only 24 hours in a day and you need to eat, you need to, you know, take your downtime, etc., and whatever time, and working backwards, I think is something that really works well for us.
I think that makes sense. Okay, we are literally up on time, but just one last question is from Maria in chronological order. Bree, how did you decide that the person that you hired for the director of ops was the best fit for that role as opposed to a partner? Like, were you looking for a director of ops, or was it the person that you just plugged into that right role?
We were looking for that role. So that's a big part of it, is specifically who we were looking for. But I will say, I mean, she's a huge partner in the business. We structure things in a very unique way I won't get into because we don't have the time, but you know, I look at everyone who's on our team as total partners. And of course, there's things like equity that we also use to compensate people. So whether or not someone is technically called a co-founder, they can still be like a very foundational partner in your business and a very foundational part of creating the business. I think of the rest as almost just like titles that are kind of interchangeable. So yeah, for us, it was mostly just that's the right role that we were looking for, right person, still a huge partner in what we're building.
I love that. Thank you both so much. And I just do want to call out Amy's super helpful, I think, smart advice about advocating for using an admin to help you get meetings with potential investors and setting that up so that you can spend all your time on actual pitching. It's that kind of thing that like a very small amount of money would actually save you a lot of time. So I just wanted to call that out because I think it's just such smart advice. Bree, Sarah, thank you so much for joining. Every time I talk to you both, I am just inspired by both of you. One of the, most like bright light, experiences of this entire year was helping to get you guys funded. And I'm really just grateful for both of you for joining me today. And thank you to Kat and Sarah of Naturally Austin too, for being such great partners, and happy International Women's Day to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. And your passion and honesty in this conversation was really energizing for me personally.
Okay.
I think building a community for ourselves and connecting into the resources is just something that is so important to do at an early stage, especially trying to connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. So